The soft murmur of conversation filled the cabin as passengers shuffled down the aisle of Horizon Airlines Flight 708, making their way to their assigned seats. Some travelers chatted enthusiastically, others were lost in their phones, and a few struggled to fit their carry-ons into the overhead compartments. The atmosphere was routine, another day, another flight. Among them, a man in a gray hoodie, worn-out jeans, and a faded baseball cap slid into seat 18C. He blended in perfectly, just another anonymous passenger on his way from Chicago to San Francisco. No one paid him any attention, which was exactly what he wanted, because this wasn't just any traveler. This was Daniel Carter, the founder and CEO of Horizon Airlines. Daniel had spent years building his airline's reputation on quality service, efficiency, and customer care. But lately, complaints had been flooding in, claims of indifferent staff, unfair treatment, and an overall decline in passenger experience. His executives had given him rehearsed explanations and hollow reassurances. But Daniel wasn't one to rely on secondhand reports. He needed to see the truth for himself. So, he devised a plan. Disguised as an average flyer, he would take one of his own flights, observe the staff, and experience the service firsthand. As he stepped onto the aircraft, he immediately took note of his reception. The flight attendants at the entrance barely looked up, offering only a dull nod before turning their attention to a well-dressed businessman behind him. No warm greetings, no smiles, just an unspoken hierarchy of who was worth their time. Daniel took his seat and watched quietly. His hope was that the complaints had been exaggerated, that the airline's values still held strong among the crew. But as the flight went on, his optimism quickly faded. A young flight attendant with sleek brown hair, her name tag reading Lisa, walked through the aisle, an air of disinterest about her. When she reached Daniel's row, she gave him the briefest glance before speaking in a monotone. "Tray table up, sir. We're about to take off." She didn't make eye contact, didn't attempt politeness. Just a flat order before she moved on. Daniel complied, saying nothing, but moments later, he noticed her entire demeanor shift. Just a few seats ahead, she stopped beside a middle-aged man in a tailored navy suit. Her smile suddenly appeared, her voice turning warm and accommodating. "Good afternoon, sir. Would you like a pillow? Maybe a pre-flight drink?" The contrast was jarring. He saw it again and again. Passengers who looked affluent were treated with care, while those in ordinary attire received rushed, robotic service. The bias was unmistakable. As the flight continued, Daniel kept watching. Another flight attendant, a tall man named Eric, showed the same behavior. Chatty and engaging with first-class passengers, but dismissive toward anyone else. The inequality was subtle but glaring. Halfway through the flight, Daniel got up to stretch and headed toward the rear of the plane. As he neared the galley, he overheard a hushed conversation between Lisa and Eric. "I swear, if they don't give us a pay bump soon, I'm done with this job," Lisa muttered, shaking her head. "These passengers are so entitled. And the company's leadership? Completely clueless." Eric chuckled. "Right? I mean, who cares? It's not like they ever actually fly with us. They just sit in their fancy offices making policies they don't understand." Lisa smirked. "Yeah, and some passengers are just a waste of time. Did you see the guy in 18C? I barely even looked at him." Eric snorted. "Same. These economy passengers act like they deserve VIP service. If they want respect, they should pay for it." Daniel's expression remained neutral. But inside, he felt a surge of disappointment. Not only were they disrespecting customers, but they were doing so under the assumption that no one important was listening. He turned away and returned to his seat, silent. He had learned everything he needed to know. When the plane finally landed in San Francisco, Daniel remained seated as passengers disembarked. Lisa and Eric were casually chatting as they gathered their things when Daniel approached. Lisa barely glanced at him. "Sir, you need to exit now." Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out his executive ID, and held it up. The color drained from Lisa's face. Eric visibly stiffened. "I'm Daniel Carter," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Founder and CEO of Horizon Airlines. And this was one of the worst flights I've ever taken." Lisa opened her mouth, but no words came out. Eric's usual smugness vanished. Daniel's gaze remained sharp. You think customers don't notice the way you treat them? You think your behavior goes unnoticed? I started this airline with one mission, to treat every passenger with dignity and respect. But you've turned it into an exclusive club where only the wealthy get proper service. Lisa stammered. Sir, we didn't mean... Daniel cut her off. Oh, you meant it? I heard every word. And now, you're going to face the consequences. He turned to the flight supervisor. Effective immediately. Both of them are relieved of their duties. I want their uniforms and ID surrendered before they leave this airport. A heavy silence filled the air. Other crew members stood in stunned silence as Lisa and Eric realized their fate had been sealed. Daniel took one last look at them before walking toward the exit. As he stepped off the plane, he left them with a final warning. This airline was built on respect. If anyone working for me thinks they can get away with anything less, they're wrong. Because I will find out. And with that, he walked away, leaving Lisa and Eric standing there, knowing they had no one to blame but themselves. As Daniel Carter walked through the jet bridge and into the terminal, a quiet sense of finality settled over him. He had come on this flight seeking answers, and what he had found was more disappointing than he had imagined. The problem wasn't just a few isolated complaints. It was a systemic issue, a culture that had taken root within his airline, one that he refused to tolerate. Passengers bustled around him, some laughing, some grumbling about layovers, others simply moving with the steady rhythm of travel. But for Daniel, this flight had been anything but routine. It had been a wake-up call. He pulled out his phone and opened his email. With a few quick taps, he drafted a message to his executive team. Subject * immediate action required. Passenger experience review. His fingers hovered for a moment before he started typing. _today, I flew Horizon Airlines as an anonymous passenger. What I witnessed was unacceptable. Disrespectful staff, preferential treatment, and a failure to uphold the values we built this company on. This ends now. He continued, outlining the necessary changes. Immediate retraining for all flight attendants. A new, anonymous evaluation program. And most importantly, direct consequences for anyone who failed to treat passengers with the dignity they deserved. He hit send. As he slipped his phone back into his pocket, he took a deep breath, feeling a shift within himself. He had spent years building this airline from the ground up, believing it was a company that put people first. Somewhere along the way, that vision had been clouded by complacency. But today, he had seen the truth with his own eyes. And now, he had the power to change it. Back at the gate, Lisa and Eric lingered near the crew desk, their faces pale, their futures uncertain. They had spent years believing they could get away with cutting corners and showing favoritism. But karma had caught up with them, swiftly and without mercy. As Daniel walked away, he didn't spare them another glance. Their fate was sealed. But his mission was just beginning. Because from this moment forward, Horizon Airlines wasn't just going to improve. It was going to become an airline that truly valued every passenger. And this time, he would make sure of it personally,